now? He asked. This question is a direction from Husserl to Freud. The premature immersion of the infantile psychic apparatus in the pharmacological audiovisual milieu short-circuits the formation of circuits of transindividuation which link a social circuit and a cerebral circuit through the intermediary of a thing, whereby what Winnicott calls a relationship of care is established, through which the fundamental confidence of the child is formed as the singularity of its relation to the thing. The pharmacological audiovisual immersion cuts the child off from the transitional milieu and bars access to potential and transitional space, which is neither inside or outside, but constitutes a relational structure on the basis of which relations of trust and faithfulness can be established. The brain is a plastic space of reticulated inscriptions organized by the interiorization and, if you will, the retro-projection of relations linked with and through the support of epiphylogenetic projection, through which nervous memory both exteriorizes and interiorizes itself with itself by passing through its outside, by making a detour through a pharmacological milieu, and such that synaptic short circuits can also occur. Transitional space is just a pharmacological as is just as pharmacological as the audiovisual milieu, which is of course also and even preeminently a transitional space. But audiovisual transitional space is purely and simply toxic for the infantile brain before 5. If it can eventually become curative, and it can, I like to remember that I was a manager of the National Institute for the Individual in France for 5 years. This would only be on the basis of circuits formed by the motricity of the infantile transitional objects. He must have a relationship to this transitional object, motor transitional object, before the audiovisual object. I make these remarks in order to emphasize that the history of the supplement, foreshadowed by the logic of the supplement of Derrida, also referred to as grammatology, presupposes a general organology of the mind and spirit which forms and deforms itself under pharmacological constraint, and as a relation between the psychosomatic, technical, and social organs that are linked together as transitive relations, that is, relations, the terms of which are constituted by the relation itself. At the heart of this organology lies a genealogy of the sensible and of the relation to the suprasensible, which it is tempting to project here as the thing itself. A genealogy that with a relation to consistencies, that is, to infinities. This means that the organology of the brain must apprehend this organ as the primary support of grammatization, where the question of writing and of its psychic inscription, as well as of the inscription of verbal traces, Saussure and Freud, using this expression, verbal traces, is both beneath that of archive writing, that is also beneath the topic of the quasi-transcendental, which laboriously for me accompanies it. I don't like this expression of quasi-transcendental. What empiric or not. Maybe transitional, but not quasi-transcendental. Instead of this topic, it would be more fruitful to focus on that of potential or transitional space, which does not exist, being neither inside nor outside, but which exists, and project that which makes life worthy of being lived. Grammatization extends well beyond writing and logos. It concerns all processes of discretization of the continuous, notably those of gesture, and as such, it describes both the proletarianization of the worker whose psychomotor knowledge is discretized and harnessed by the machine, depriving him of his savoir-faire, his know-how, and the artificial audiovisual perception which enables the analogical and then the digital discretization of the flux of images and sounds by, however, creating short circuits, for example, those that destroy the relation of care, that is, of the savoir-vivre, the know-how to live, not only the know-how to do, and the formation of confidence, which provide access to consistencies, by bearing access to the infinities without which neither confidence nor trust could be imagined. A transitional support, every object, is a pharmacon, which brings with it the pharmacological constitution of those who live pharmacologically, us, affected by the thing, and such that the constitution stretches and sometimes steers the soul, that the psychic individual is, insofar as participating in collective individuation, it can disindividuate itself, and in so doing, disindividuate the collective, that is, damage it. It is the subject of the Gorgias, the discussion between Socrates and Gorgias, driving toward the abyss. Because if there can be no psychic individuation without collective individuation, the converse is also true. There is no psychic disindividuation without collective disindividuation. Disindividuation is what Winnicott calls the false self. Does the false self presuppose a true self, which would be authentic or eigentliche or proper? Clearly not. It is a transitional self, a relation woven beyond inside and outside, and which must be thought on the basis of a pharmacology of the soul. This is the most gigantic point that Simondon makes in his Individuation psychique et collective. It will be published in Minnesota Press in a few months. It presents itself in the work as the question of the indefinite dyad, that is, of a bipolarity which constitutes the play of tendencies throughout the psychic as well as the social individual, and which is presented in Simondon as the ordeal of temptation. It is impossible to think either of the goodness or the evil of the soul, which are constitutive and dynamic tendencies. The dynamic of the drives, we call that like that since Freud, which supply energy to the libido, energy which is then dynamically willed or developed. It is impossible to think that without taking these pharmaca into consideration, insofar as they can become poisonous as well as curative and beneficial. The pharmacology of the soul is what Winnicott describes as its originally transitional dimension